this and then come right back to this. So, hi guys. Let's look at some questions. We're gonna do this a little, not too long. Thank you. Thank you, Eve, for helping collect these questions for me. Okay, so of these 4 games, which game would be best with the addition of dragons? Oh God. We talked about how, I mean, the Grinning Colossus is sort of a fascinating figure because it evokes dragon, but it does it implicitly. It suggests that there is a mode of confronting enemies that normally works but doesn't work this time. In fact, that's the whole game. There is no other part of the game. There are no other enemies. There's no mode of engaging with enemies that works normally, because this is literally the extent of the enemies. The only way that you can defeat enemies in You Have to Burn the Rope is by dropping chandeliers on them. That's the mechanic. But it's still like really makes you think about the dragon trope that is so popular in other games. I'm super tempted to say, I'm curious where I Am Bread goes. So, okay, Kingdom, like, could legitimately actually have a dragon in it. Like, I would not be at all surprised. That seems like an entirely reasonable thing for that game to have. Dad Simulator, I mean, it doesn't have enough of an underlying structure to really support the idea of a character that breaks the rules. And I feel like a dragon father and son pair would just be too standout. Like, it'd be too obvious. There's not enough potential confusion, which is, I mean, that's what that game does so well, right? That's the line that it walks, is that there's no way that with any kind of consideration you could mistake those dads for one another, or you could mistake which son goes with which dad. But as you rush, as you sort of run and try to like do it as fast as you can, and navigate the space at the same time, they are similar enough that you can sort of like, there's room for confusion. There's play in there. If you had a dragon father and son, I think they just like stand out too much. Although that it would be a fun sort of mod, I guess. But I Am Bread, like, I am really curious where that goes, because there is enough of the game there that I played that has established a rhythm and a pattern, and there's a sense that difficulty is increasing, but it's increasing in sort of regular ways, and at a like pace that as a player I already understand. I sort of understand the beats of that story, even though I don't know where the plot is going to go, or even how long it is. It would be really interesting if at the end of that game they throw in a twist that's so out of left field and changes the game so much that it becomes something really drastically different. I think that would be super interesting. Like, for example, the human character, like, intruding on the room that you're trying to navigate. That breaks the framework of the story open so badly that I don't even know how that would be handled. But it would be really interesting to like have the designers come up with a solution to that. I mean, you could also just put like a dragon in the room, and then that's another way that you can toast the bread, right? So there's that too. What do I have to do to convince you to do a play-by-play of The Witness, which I'm aware you've already played? I have, in fact, not already played The Witness. I was considering it tonight. It was suggested a couple of times on Twitter. I'm probably at some point going to do a play-by-play of The Witness. I'm not super excited about it. I was really disappointed by Braid. Even though it is, I mean, let's be honest, the perfect kind of game for play-by-play. I mean, I think it would make a great play-by-play game. So The Witness probably similarly would. I think it's going to drive me fucking crazy. But it's also probably going to be like beautiful and intriguing at the same time, and push a lot of buttons in the right way. So at some point, yeah, we'll see. Just keep at it. Persistence, I think, is probably the answer to that question. Thoughts on how this game is technically a roguelike. Roguelite. Again, roguelite. People keep saying roguelite. Is that in vogue now? I'm super curious about this word roguelite and what is meant by it. With permadeath and persistent progression, and how it is similar and different from other games of the genre. This is Shower with Your Dad Simulator, I think, is being referred to here. Because this is a question from a little bit ago. I mean, it's, yeah. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say. I'm a formalist. You guys know me. You know I like to categorize things. I'm super intrigued by this point that you bring up, that formally Shower with Your Dad Simulator matches very well with the genre that we think about as, or that I think of as, roguelikes, and is probably similar to what you're referring to. But part of why I think that formalism is limited, and why it's sort of important to me philosophically that we remind ourselves that it is a limited tool, is that the experience of this game is very different from the experience of at least modern roguelikes that I'm familiar with and have played. The experience of it is much more of a mix between a classic arcade game, something like I don't even know, like Centipede, maybe, or even something like Pac-Man, or Snake. Like, it's that kind of play, and something that's actually, I feel like, much more personal, which my experience with roguelikes is that they are not that. They are a lot of things, and they can be very compelling. They can be a lot of fun, but it is difficult for them to be emotional or personal because they rely so heavily on procedurally generated content that is not authored, is not sort of, deliberate in its presentation or its pace. And different games, approach this problem differently. And And there are a lot of games that incorporate procedurality and effective storytelling. Like, don't get me wrong, but Rogue and a lot of roguelike games are really about the sort of the sense of exploration of a dangerous and unknown space, rather than creating and there is an emotional connection that is there. Like, I think that the fact that Shower with Your Dad Simulator is mimics that form is not coincidental. I think that it is tapping into a similar sense of anxiety and I would describe Shower with Your Dad Simulator as confusion. That's less of a classic roguelike thing, but there's a similar sort of like mystery, which is, there's that's parallel maybe. So I think it's as sort of an intellectual exercise, I think sort of marking off the ways in which it fits that genre very neatly is interesting, as a sort of acknowledgement of how it is doing what it's trying to do, how it's achieving the experience that it set out to create. Recognizing the relationship between that experience and the sort of classic experience of a roguelike is really important. And I mean, that's great design, that they sort of recognize that that's a set of mechanics, that's a game form that gets them halfway to their goal right there. But I think that there's something that is not just in how it's themed, not just the dramatic elements, but certainly heightened by the dramatic elements in that game, that that makes it feel quite different. And in a lot of ways, I have a hard time putting it in that genre box, even though formally it has all of those sorts of elements. It's a really interesting question. Okay, I'm moving on. Shower with Your Dad Sim, what do you think the devs were aiming for at face value? It's silly, potentially provocative, maybe even taboo, doubles down on nudity being a thing. This could be seen as just a dumb thing, looking to shock people, but as you said, it actually speaks to something relatable. Let's face it, there is nothing shocking about the graphics. That's very true. The graphics, I mean, this is a game that is all about the conceptual layer, right? The game the game on its surface is pretty ridiculous. The graphics are I mean, cool. It very stylized. That's a popular, that sort of that style of pixel person is in vogue right now. And there's nothing wrong with the graphics, but they are silly. They are sort of I don't clunky. Is that what I want to say? They're quite abstract. That's what it is. They're quite abstract, and the game has a absolutely tongue-in-cheek, silly, self-consciously silly aesthetic, with the dad jokes that sort of introduce each play of the game, with the sort of insistent emphasis on the nudity that is, from a visual standpoint, pretty ridiculous, super abstract, not especially representational, but suggestive at the same time. It achieves in its visual aesthetic a comedy, a juvenile comedy that that it does very well. That I think is, first of all, not always easy to achieve, in a way that is so inoffensive, I guess. A lot of games that aim for juvenile comedy end up in a place where there's a raunchiness to that is not always appealing. This game doesn't have any of that, right? It's a sniggering kind of a game, because there is nothing really to get offended at, or there's nothing even that is it captures so well the sort of like nervous I can't think of another word better than juvenile. The sort of juvenile laughter of being in an awkward situation of showering with a group of men at a public bath, at like, a gym or a YMCA, and how sort of funny that is because of how taboo that the human body has been sort of made out to be, and yet here is a situation in which we're supposed to treat it as though it is completely normal. We're supposed to bring no attention to it, right? And that, I think that the discrepancy between those ideas for a child, there's something sort of confusing and funny about that, about sort of confronting that situation, and it frankly hangs a lampshade on the absurdity of life and society, which we're still grappling with at that age. So, I mean, I think that it's absolutely silly. And it plays with the provocative, it plays with the taboo, it plays with those concepts, I think, for its silliness, as part of its silliness. But I think that it's cultivating all of this in a very deliberate way that reinforces the experience of playing that game and the experience of being that person, which is so relatable. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's the key to the game, is that that is such a universal experience, and it manages to identify that experience, to identify its universality, and then to tap into what is universal about it. And I feel like that's remarkable. Even though the game itself, on the level of being a game, it's not very deep. It's not sophisticated. I mean, there's nothing about it that's sophisticated except that the design that went into it to sort of achieve this effect. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of my take on it. That's what I think that game is trying to achieve, and why I think there is a subtle brilliance to it, in what it manages to do. It's also interesting to sort of compare and contrast that with something like I Am Bread, which is similarly attacking a humor through interactive media, which is, again, something that's not often done, and a lot of the examples that we have for it aren't really good or true examples. They're examples of humor through writing as a component, as an element of an interactive piece, but they're not really examples of humor in interactivity. I Am Bread absolutely is. Shower with Your Dad Simulator absolutely is. So they're really kind of standout games for that reason, just because they achieve something that is not often even attempted, but certainly not often done well. Is you have to burn the rope a game? Yes. I by my definition of game, which I think is flexible, but rests largely on the design of an experience with a participatory nature. It's absolutely a game. I think it's probably one of the games that helped me define for myself what a game is. It is also, I think it's important to recognize that it does not fit a lot of the criteria of things that we commonly think of as games. And that's, that is undeniable. And it is worth sort of recognizing and thinking about and considering. Game, to me, as it is used, as it has sort of come to have significance in our culture, is not about structured systems. It's not about end states. It's not about player dynamics. It's not about competition or mechanics. It's about participatory experience. And, that's a very, very broad umbrella. Recognize that. There's not a lot of things that fall outside of it. But by those standards, by my standards, it absolutely is a game. I would like to ask what Sean's favorite bread is. Please discuss the merits of your favorite bread. I don't know that I'm a sophisticated enough gastronomer of bread to really have a favorite. So the bread that I buy, my supermarket bread, is like a double fiber, like a high fiber wheat bread that I find tastes pretty good, is low calorie, fits into my sort of ideal diet well, and actually, frankly, lasts a long time in my cupboard. I don't know that it's anywhere near my favorite bread, though. Okay. I love a good potato bread. I'm a huge fan of a potato bread. Big fan of potato bread. Also, I don't know beyond that. I certainly do enjoy pastries. I don't know if those count as breads. Do we draw a line somewhere? Is it cinnamon rolls? Can cinnamon rolls be my favorite type of bread? Also, like a cinnamon raisin toast, I enjoy quite a lot. Like a buttered cinnamon raisin toast. Okay, there are a lot of really good breads. Don't get me wrong. I'm seeing some suggestions: focaccia, sourdough, good breads. I'm just trying to think favorite bread. What do you think about the obfuscation of mechanics encouraging you to restart as a means of lengthening the playtime for a game? Not a fan. I don't know that that's what Kingdom is explicitly trying to do. There are a number of other reasons why you might include that as a structure in a game. Another one that I think is not particularly generous is that it is easier in a lot of ways than producing a really effective tutorial. If you say that, which is not to say that it's easy. I mean, a prerequisite for it is that you create a game that is inherently sticky enough in its individual interactions that I will continue to play even though I don't know what's going on. Which, I mean, Jesus Christ, that is hard to achieve. But assuming that that's the game that you're making, or even the game that you've made, it is easier to say, here, take this thing, play around with it until you understand it, and then play it for real, than it is to create a tutorial that like explains all of that well. It's really easy to make a bad tutorial. It's really hard to make a good one. More generously, there is an aesthetic to that mysteriousness, right? And that is also very in vogue right now. But this sort of sense of like you are dropped into a world, and the rules of that world are something that you don't entirely understand, but that it is understandable, and you can interact with it, and you're rewarded for interacting with it and for developing that understanding. I mean, all of those things, like that is an experience, right? And a game can aim deliberately for creating that experience, and might, in doing that, create this situation. I mean, I think there is a question of whether that is the best choice for this kind of investment and economy building game, because it is so easy for it to go so wrong, and when it goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong, and then the player has nothing to do, and that's rough. But we did not play all the way through that game, and I am hoping to play more of it. That may be in keeping with the overall sense that the game is creating. Okay. I'm gonna like skim through some of these a little bit because I gotta go home. Sorry. My point is, if that is a strategy for lengthening the amount of time a player spends with the game, I'm extremely dismissive of that, and I understand that there are sort of practical and economic reasons why you might do that. It grates to me as a designer. And my own philosophy and value system, doing anything to increase the length of a game is really self-destructive. I would so much rather play a game that was as good as the game that you're making, but half the length. I would so much rather play that. I will play your long game if it is that good, if it's good enough to sort of warrant it. But the length of time you are asking me to spend with your game is part of the cost in my sort of analysis of it. And I know that that's not universally true. I know that there are other people who calculate that differently. But Yeah, that's where I'm coming from, and so the idea of doing anything to artificially lengthen a game seems really counterproductive to me. Can we read the "You Have to Burn the Rope" essay? I'll look for it, and if I can find it, I'll post it on Twitter. Have games become patronizingly easy? I think that's case by case. In general, I would say no. I think games have found other values than difficulty, which they are exploring. But I think that's a very different thing. How many times have you played "You Have to Burn the Rope" to be able to sing on tune? It's not so much how many times I've played the game as how many times I've listened to that song. I am occasionally surprising in my ability to sing, but I am surprising because it is absolutely the more common state of affairs that I cannot. The answer is a lot, though. Does the song make the game? Yes and no. The song, I think, is vitally important to that game. I think that it is a capstone. It's not out of line to say that the song makes the game. But that said, I mean, the game would not be the same without the song, right? That said, I think the song would not be the same without the game. And I think the game does a number of things, and does them well and does them deliberately, and all of them point towards the same enrichment of experience without tapping into difficulty or challenge or the fiero emotion that's associated with agency, so I don't think that it is just the song. I don't think that the song alone makes the game, but it is, I'm also not undervaluing how important that is to the experience. Would Portal be 80% of what it is without the song at its end? I mean, Portal is fucking great. No, I mean, yes, right. Again, Portal's actually a fantastic parallel, right? Because, it's a good parallel. It's not. It is a much better game than You Have to Burn the Rope. It is a much better game all the way through, and the song at the end is spectacular and lovely and puts a crown on the whole thing. Is there a metaphor? Is there a common saying that I was reaching for there? I don't even know what it would be. But it pulls everything together. It doesn't pull everything together. It just it's the cherry on top. That's what it is. That's the metaphor. It's the cherry on top. And the game would not be as good if it didn't have the song. It would still be great. It doesn't need the song to be great. And You Have to Burn the Rope maybe does need the song to be great. But the parallel between them is that they both sort of have a lot they have a lot going on, and that is just one component of it. Why were you disappointed by Braid? A couple of reasons. Some of it is expectation, for me, the concept of a platformer where you can undo what you just did, thereby dramatically reducing the penalty, the cost of failure, is such an attractive idea. As somebody for whom the sort of brutal grind of iterating on a platformer until you can do it perfectly and get lucky enough to do it perfectly is exceedingly tedious and not at all engaging. The idea of a platformer that has no costs for failure, where I will never have to repeat a level. I will only ever have to repeat a jump. I was enamored of that idea, and that is not what Braid actually is. And so I found it disappointing in that sense. I also found it disappointing because I think that while a lot of the puzzles are extremely clever, Jonathan Blow has what I would characterize, maybe unfairly, but as a tendency towards a disregard for a player's actual experience playing the game. And I think that, I also feel this way about Phil Fish and Fez. I think that Fez managed to create a community environment where the sort of sharing of the burden of that game was part of the general experience of it, and that makes a huge difference. But Braid really didn't attempt to do anything like that. Braid is very much a single-player game that you are meant to sort of sit and stare at until you figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, then it's because you're not as smart as John Blow. And, I just don't buy that. I feel like that kind of disdain, condensation, that kind of disdain for the player shows, like, it shines through in the design of the game. I find that unattractive. So yeah, I mean, which isn't to say that Jonathan Blow isn't smart. I mean, he's very smart. He comes up with very, very clever puzzles, and I appreciate the cleverness of those puzzles. I do not appreciate the sort of what I think he wants from me is a sort of like quiet, concentrated consideration of the brilliance of those puzzles, and that's not something that appeals to me. Is it roguelite of bread? Really? Is it roguelite? You guys are just you're fucking with me now, right? Is it roguelite of bread? Okay. I refuse to even read it again. Is it roguelike of bread to obscure the ways you can get toasted? I don't think so. Not in a way that's obvious to me. Roguelike is much more about a space that is mysterious and needs to be explored because literally nobody has ever seen it before. Because it was created for you, and there is no sort of rationale behind it. It is inexplicably weird and mysterious and potentially dangerous, but there's an appeal of exploring that. And I Am Bread, I think, is its solutions are very much designed and they are narrative. You are meant to be able to figure them out. You're meant to sort of think like, hey, it's a heater. Maybe I can toast myself on the heater. Hey, it's an iron. Maybe I can toast myself on the iron. The fact that they're obscured, I'm not sure what the intention behind that is. I think that it's meant to force you to explore the space the first time that you play. I think that it's a game in general that doesn't overly value the first time you play. I think it's a game that, that wants to be replayed and it wants to be streamed, and so to sort of give you and it designs its experience so that it is good in those contexts. So to then also say, but the first time that you play it, you need to do an exhaustive exploration of the room, and it's less designed for that. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of weird. That strikes me as kind of weird. Okay, two more. According to your definition, is there a difference between play and game? No, not really. Play is the way that you engage in a game. Well, I mean, there can be, but I'm loath to make that distinction, right? I mean, again, language is descriptive. We use game to mean all sorts of different kinds of experiences, and we use play generically as the way that you interact with a game. You play an ARG, you play an escape room. Like, I don't think any of that is incorrect. I think that there are more specific definitions of play and even of game that can be informative, that can be sort of thought-provoking, but should never be considered definitive. And play is a word that I like to sort of use and think about. Play is a word, I think it's significant that we talk about play as the thing that we do with games. And also we talk about play being sort of the looseness in non-game systems. So the sort of classic example that I like to use is if you have your car, if you're in your car and you're driving, there's a little bit that you can move your steering wheel before it really actually engages with the wheels and turns your car. And likewise, there's a little bit that you can sort of swerve your car and still stay safely within the lane that you're in. And the term that we use to describe both of those things is that there's some play. The wheel has some play, or that you're. I'm actually not sure how you would use it in a sentence to describe the other one, but that is describing a looseness in the system, and we use play frequently to describe that as well. Play as a noun. And I think that that's super significant, and thinking about play as a verb, the way that we use it in relationship with games, and play as a noun, the way that we use it in the relationship with systems and interaction with systems, is significant and also, provocative. But again, none of that should be considered definitive. You like the word play? That figures 2/3 of the words in the name of the show are play. Okay, last one. I find that to me, including grinding as a core aspect of the game seems like an artificial inflation of game time. Do you find this to be the case? It's possible, but I do not always find it to be the case. Sometimes I think grinding serves an important role in the emotional impact and the pacing of a game. There are plenty of examples that go overboard, and I think you could make a strong argument, use grinding or grinding mechanic to artificially inflate the length of the game. And in those cases, I feel the same way. I feel like that's that detracts from the value of the game. Not always enough to make it bad, but so that you would say this game would have been better without so much grinding. That's also something that I think can be subjective. So, okay, I'm done. That's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Really, really appreciate it. You are all fantastic. And I love doing this, and I am glad that you're all here. I am going to be hosting a brand new show starting tomorrow called After Class. It's going to be on this channel, at least for the time being, starting at 7:30, so a half hour after play-by-play normally starts on Fridays. And it is going to be sort of whatever the hell is going on in the game lab at USC on a Friday night. And I think to start it off, Marty and I are interested in playing Mass Effect 3, which I have never played with the DLC. And apparently it's a very different experience with all of the DLC. And I have not played it all in a while, and so probably have forgotten a good chunk of it. So that should be fun. The show's going to have... We're going to figure out the format. It's going to be pretty loose, but I expect that it will be fun going into the future. Yeah, we're gonna do some experimentation tomorrow, so please stop by, please join us, please bear with us as we sort of figure out how things are gonna work. But yeah, I think if you stick with it, it's gonna be a fun thing for us to do. I'm looking forward to it over the summer. Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Have a great night. I'll see you guys tomorrow.